Welcome to You Heard It From Us, the podcast where adventure meets advice. I'm DnDWife, your artistic storyteller and dedicated miniature painter.
And I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your seasoned storyteller with a flair for epic tales and a passion for bringing our worlds to life. Together, we are a couple of nerds.
Whether you're navigating the depths of the dungeon or the dynamics of your gaming table, we're here to explore the vibrant world of tabletop role-playing games with you.
Each episode, we dive into topics that every gamer can relate to, like, is there really such thing as too many dice?
Or how to keep the peace when your co-adventurer is also your co-pilot in life.
We share our own trials, triumphs, and tales from the enchanting world of Extraeus and beyond, all while connecting with you, our amazing TTRPG community.
From community polls to social media shoutouts, we want you to be part of our adventure. So grab your favorite set of dice
and join us as we embark on a quest to make your tabletop gaming experience more fun and meaningful.
This is You Heard It From Us,
where every episode is an adventure.
Welcome back, adventurers, to another episode of You Heard It From Us, the podcast where we dive into all things tabletop and Dungeons and Dragons. I'm your host, DnDWife.
And I'm DM Eguile, and today we got a big topic to explore. D&D One is on the horizon, and we are asking, how are you planning your games with the new system?
That's right. Whether you're sticking with D&D 5e, adopting parts of the new edition, or curious about how it'll change your table, we're breaking it all down for you today. Plus, we'll be sharing some of our new experiences with it and thoughts on how these new mechanics might shape the future of our games.
We've also got some feedback from our Couple of Nerds community poll on this topic, and let me tell you, the responses were pretty split. People are really divided as to whether they're going to stick with what they know or try something new.
So grab your dice, your favorite snacks, and get ready for a deep dive into the world of D&D One. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review if you enjoy the show. Let's jump right in.
Now, for us, rules are obviously how you start everything.
We view them as more like guidelines.
Well, but at the same time, anytime you start a new game, whether it's Monopoly or D&D, right, you have to go through the rules. The rules are super important. Yeah. And so for us, you're the one that got us kind of started on that track.
I did, yeah. I really liked watching Critical Role when we first started getting into it. And at first, we weren't really looking to play. We were looking to watch first.
I mean, it really was, right? Like, so we didn't know any... Like, I had heard of D&D. I had seen it, but, like... The rules itself were never shown.
No, yeah, and I'd never played.
It was always spoken, okay, well, this is what you do, you roll, but it wasn't okay, what's the exact mechanics?
Right, and what happens when you do this? Nobody explained it, so it was really tough to just sit there. And even watching Critical Role, we realized eventually, once we started trying to get into it ourselves, that the rules that they were using weren't also the complete D&D 5e rules either.
Yeah, because for me, it was I think it was always... we had initially heard of Homebrew, but to us it was always it's characters or it's places. It was never the rules.
Right. The rules are all of your own making.
Rules. It's well, how do you play a game if you're making your own rules?
Does that really work? And it's well, yeah, because, we found out later that DMs really have to do a bunch of background work.
It's really subjective to the table too, right? We really found that out. I mean, I remember it was you and me when we first started, and I think we got the starter pack, and we were going through the rules. And I remember we got that, and then we bought the player's handbook.
Yep.
And now you get the rules.
The rules.
And it was one of those things where it was okay, there's a lot more to this. And not only that, but it really did set the pace. Because I think, with D&D and how it sets out its rule system, it does make it a little easier to come into it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've also tried Pathfinder rules, and those get crazy.
They're so much more convoluted.
So there's a reason why 5th edition has been this, kind of iconic system where a lot of people wanted edits, not necessarily
not a full replacement.
A whole new system.
Yeah.
Right? For me, it's been kind of a weird, long evolution. I mean, obviously, you as a player, it's more, I think, of a ride-along experience when it comes to the rules.
Yeah.
We've had a few kind of table rules that we've made where we've opened it up to discussion, whether we want, potions to be bonus actions.
Right, to do certain things.
Things like that. But for the most cases, obviously, as the DM, it's mostly going to be me kind of combing through, seeing what rules. And when I started, obviously, it was bread and butter. There was no rule of cool. It was the rule of WotC.
Yeah.
It was, what does the rule say?
What does the book say?
What it is.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't really much interpretation because we didn't know how to play.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that back then versus now, where you'll go and try to look at what the Crawford ruling has to say, but it's not necessarily what we're going to adopt.
Yeah, like 9 times out of 10, it's a table vote.
Yeah, really.
Because it's like, it's all of us playing. It doesn't really matter if it's not in the rules.
Right.
and that's kind of what ended up happening. Like, as we were playing, it starts, I think, with a lot of people with this. It's just you start playing modules and you want to tweak it to be a little bit more connected to our story. And that kind of starts opening your eyes about, okay, well, the rules can really be adapted, because at the end of the day,
they're not concrete.
At the end of the day, it's about just playing, right? And so, like, you have to sometimes be more customized, and change rules. And that was the great thing about 5e, is that we were all kind of out there creating different rule sets, modules that all related to this one type.
Yeah.
So if you wanted, pew pews in your game, you could go find a
specific
kind of a grouping
module for that
and bring it into your game. And so I think that's where a lot of that kind of testiness comes with the D&D One or D&D Next or 5.5 or whatever they're calling it now.
Right.
Is that there is a lot of changes that were both wanted and not wanted. And so, we really look at, like, it's kind of the same way that we all play, right? We get that early game approach and we start making changes and we adapt. And for D&D One, we saw a lot of that in the early. You, me, and my table all looked at those early kind of releases.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was, okay, this is cool, this is bad, but it was like, okay, at least they're reaching out.
At least they're trying.
But then it became something else. And then it became, okay, well, we heard you, but we don't care.
Yeah.
And then it was like, so that would be like, okay, to me, it was like, all right, so if I was a dungeon master and I was like, hey, I'm interested in these rules, let's try it out this session. Everyone has a terrible time, and everyone's like, man, we didn't really like it. It was cool to try, but it's not our cup of tea. And I go, guess what? We're doing it tomorrow.
Yep.
and so I think that's where a lot of that issue comes in, because it really is about that freedom. And there is kind of this, starting this idea of, which side are you going to be on?
Yeah.
And some people, I think there is this kind of, D&D is kind of a weird one, though, because there is this idea of you got to always be at the most recent patch,
Yeah.
So it's like, if a new version, obviously
you do want to be up on the know at least,
right? You should switch to it. You should have, if you're going to play the newest version, you should be playing the newest version.
Yeah.
And it becomes this kind of dichotomy amongst players and people, where it goes, okay, well, if you're going to play a new version, you should play all of that new version.
Right. All of it.
You
not
can't
just
pick
the bits.
you can't pick and choose. So you have but then you get these people who, are veterans, and they're going, wait, the entire motto of D&D is picking and choosing what you
whatever
like.
You want.
And so it really is kind of interesting that, we see now with all the new posts that come out, what we do get to see, a lot of it is where people are either already going, okay, well, I like that part, not that part. I like that part, not that part.
Yeah.
But whether or not people are actually going to jump on board, we were kind of curious, because even at our table, I think there was a general consensus of, we're not quite there
completely
yet.
On board.
Like, we want to see it a little bit longer.
Yeah, we want to see what it looks like in practice and action.
Right, and so it is something where it is like, prove it to us. Let put your money where your mouth is. Yeah, right. Let's see what it is.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of made me, pose this question to our community. And so what was our question for the night of this episode?
Absolutely. Our question is, with D&D One's release, how are you planning your games?
And what did we find out?
Well, we had a couple of different options. The first option was, of course, continue using the same system that you've always been using. So whether that's 5e, version 3, whatever your whatever your pick is. The second option was switching to one D&D completely, making the complete switch over. And then the third option was using some parts, basically pick your own adventure sort of scenarios.
Goosebumps way.
Yeah. And the resounding winner in this was the pick and choose your own, because I think that's the essence of D&D.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what shows, right? Like we're really in an essence of, take what we want and kind of trash what we don't.
Yeah.
And I think it's really indicative too, because I think Pathfinder went through the exact same kind of thing. Like they just recently came with their second edition.
Yeah, they did.
And a lot of people, it always is. It's, the new one isn't always the best and it takes some time to get used to.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it is. It's just we're really hesitant. D&D 5e has been around for quite some time now.
It's been a really good, not the best or anything. Nobody's claiming that it's the best of all the versions.
No,
but it's been good to us.
Right, yeah. And so because of that, a lot of people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would even say that this could be a lot of what was happening in the transition to 5e.
Yeah, from 4.
From 4. 4 was a little bit, in an instance, 5 saved 4 because a lot of people had issues with 4th edition coming from 3rd.
That's why people were only playing 3rd, not 4.
And losing a lot of the inventory, and it became a little bit more micromanagey, and there was a little less control. So it really was this kind of idea that, we've seen it go both ways, where the new edition is a godsend, and others where we're gonna put our pinky toes in the water, and we're gonna
check
see
the temperature first.
What's going on.
Yeah. There's a lot of player hesitation too on switching over, and there's a lot of concerns on the side of players because a change in rules, it didn't just come with the change in rules. It came with changes in things like race and the different classes you could choose and different things that classes do. Yeah. The way that different things like the bard or the druid interact.
The rogue.
Yep. So it changed a lot, and it changed some of the things that the players really loved about those types of classes. So that's where the issue comes in, where the trust is really difficult to build up with a new system.
Yeah, and I think it too is the issue comes also in like with balancing. And you're always protective of your class, if you're like, I love paladins, and if anyone touches a paladin, and whereas like what really is kind of that where we have a rough comparison is like video games, right? So if they come out with a patch and they make something stronger and everyone's like, boo, this is the worst ever, don't do it, they can take another patch tomorrow
and fix it.
Yeah. D&D is a little tougher, right?
Because you got to reprint books.
Print or send out PDFs and then all this kind of stuff. So I think it is one of those things where players were wanting everyone to be perfect. Every character class should be different. Everything should be perfect. I've had people tell me, talk to me about, the monk now is finally something that is viable.
Yeah, that people can
then
do.
All those rogue players who are now upset
are lamenting
with the new roguish actions and all that, and giving a DC to the rogue, so now they have to multi-spec, and it just was, not quite what they're looking for.
Yeah.
But obviously you can't get every single check mark knocked off.
You
it's
can't
just
please
impossible.
Everyone,
But I think that's really what puts in that essence of what we are, and what we really are these people that kind of pick through what we like, and we mash them together because every single table is different, right? And so really, and you're with me on this one. We are super protective of our house rules.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Once we made them, we not only made them with the intention to make sure that every player got to enjoy themselves at the table, but also that there were rules to make sure that everybody was equally enjoying the table.
Yeah, and the thing too is, with like certain house rules or mechanics, is that if like a new version completely kind of either gets rid of or already incorporates, that could create a gap that some players don't want to jump into yet. They're just going to be like, well, no, we've already created our edit for that problem. Why do we need to jump to a new system?
Right. Or if they like a particular 5e version of a class and they really wanted to play that, but now we're playing 1 and there's no room for that. It really kind of diminishes the enjoyment.
Yeah, and that's like we've been talking, and for us, there are benefits and challenges to switching to D&D One, but really at the whole point that I look at it is that I'll take content no matter where I can get it.
Yeah.
In no way has like, the way I feel like some of these players sometimes feel like in DMs is that with a new edition, it means that like all the 5th edition books are being burned and destroyed from existence, and that the D&D, military police are coming into everybody's table,
taking all your old
ensuring
books.
that you are at D&D One. It's a cherry picking game. We pick all we want. I mean, when we started this new campaign in Extraeus, I loved the idea that stat bonuses were based on background and not race.
Yeah.
Now, that's a D&D One thing.
Yep.
Now, I think that's cool because it makes it now where when most people pick the same races to get the same stat buffs, we see tons of elves with magical bonuses. But if we can have a different character with a scholar and get the same magical bonuses, I think that's so cool.
Wielding elven magic.
That's still pretty canon.
True.
It'd be more, you get to see more of like what I call
dwarf,
the ugly races.
Sure.
A Minotaur a Minotaur Harry Potter.
There you go.
I think that would be hilarious, right? It's so, it's one of those things where it is a cool point. Now, obviously, I don't like everything of D&D One.
No.
So I'm not going to take everything, but this is one of those things where, cherry picking isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's what we do to make our own rules and our own sets.
It's so funny. Other games, that's not really a thing you can do is cherry pick the rules.
It's usually been told that's the worst thing you can do.
That's not something you can do. But D&D is so unique and it's so versatile as a game. It's just in and of itself since its creation that it really gives the best sort of avenues for both DMs and players to choose their own adventure. It is that sort of facilitator to choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and like even for me, like homebrewing, originally I was very much into the rules and it was like, okay, I got to, the books, they're there.
Yeah.
But once I kind of had that understanding and learned the rules as a dungeon master, it really then becomes like homebrewing is your next thing.
It's the next evolution.
You're making your own stuff. We've I've personally have created my own new kind of initiative system that it's a little different. It works for us. It probably won't work for everyone. It's more adapted for larger tables. And some people might think that it's not necessarily balanced,
right?
But we like it, and it works for us.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm not going to everyone and saying this is what you have to play, and that's the glory of how we set up tables, right? And that's that feeling. It's more of I always feel like as players, you guys are the ones more looking at like, okay, what rule set is my DM using? Not necessarily what is WotC doing, but what is my DM doing?
Exactly. That's who you want to look to see where the trends are shifting, at least. If something's going to change, your DM's going to be the first one at the forefront to know about it. And that's also where the conversation sort of shifts to different types of players and their reaction to the new edition.
Yeah, I think that's gonna, the biggest thing for me always is bringing in the new people. We need the young players. We need the new people. We need them to go on and start their own families of D&D families.
We want the children to grow up into adults that play D&D.
If we're gonna keep the hobby, we have to keep it new, fresh, and bring in new
and then faces. They pass it on to their younglings. That's what we want. And so we find that for newer players, for people that are just coming into D&D right now, adopting D&D One might be the best option for them. It's the most user-friendly for them at this point. They don't know anything else. But for those of us who've been around with other versions,
couple of campaigns,
we understand that there are things that we might want to keep from the older versions. And there are things that we might want to keep from new versions that we get, or older versions that we've never played before.
Yeah, I mean, one example is one of our players. He played 3rd edition.
Yeah, and exclusively.
And there's times where he has to ask me something, and he'll be like, "Oh, wait, that was 3rd edition.
Yeah,
never mind."
Sorry.
So it is that thing where your first set, like the first set of rules you start on, is really kind of what you're gonna always feel like you're locked in on.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Whenever you're a new player, it always feels like the rules are more important because we've been brought up to we've grown up doing that, right? Yeah. We must always follow the rules of a game if we want to play the game and win it fair and square.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a really good way to look at it too is like video gaming. Like what console you started at kind of determines like where you kind of go in the rule. Like, did you play with analog sticks or were you a Super Nintendo person? So really just shows like the older the dog, the harder the train to chain them to a new system, right?
Yeah.
And I think the same goes with DMs because we put so much work into this, like learning all the rules and all the mechanics.
Tough, yeah.
So when it is something where it's like, I think, I've been doing this for over 7 years now, and I even think Matt is in the same, Matt Mercer or Brandon Lee Mulligan, is that we can't know every class ability and mechanic.
All the time.
And now when you have a whole new edition, if you kind of do this like back and forth thing, it's like, how are you not going to get stuck by the wrong move because you're trying to bounce between,
or sometimes make mistakes as to what version you're using.
And then it's like, and then it becomes another issue in the fact of like, okay, but then what if you have half your players want to play with D&D One rules and half your players want to play 5e, and so that's going to lead to some discussions, I think, between the table of, you know, kind of finding the middle ground, or really the funny thing, creating entirely new homebrew to rebalance the new stuff.
Yeah.
So,
to
you know,
make it fair.
if you want, you know, to use some of the new rogue stuff, but not the other stuff, but you want, you know, that's obviously going to change the balancing because one is meant to be for the other system. So I think that's going to be open for discussion. And that's as always, as what we push is communication.
Absolutely.
Especially at your table.
It is not just a relationship thing. It is a friend thing. It is a table thing.
and that's honestly why we do You Heard It From Us, because we believe very much in the community kind of talking about and opening up, because that's really what D&D is and how it kind of you know, creates itself. You know, for me, I think it really kind of shows because Extraeus had used some of D&D One's creation process.
Absolutely.
It was one of the early releases, and I just really liked it.
You did,
you know, the backstory features and what it did, and I really liked it, was for you guys, because I'm creating a new world, it's a little easier to adapt, right? Because it's like, oh, okay, well, we're in a homebrew world. This must be the new homebrew rules. And so I was able to really kind of bring it in and out, and have ways to have D&D One mechanics that I liked. And also that I had some of you guys say, okay, we really like this, so can we have that in there as well?
Right.
And that kind of, these new tools allowed kind of even more freedom, because we're using some new rules, or we're integrating those rules. And what I really feel like D&D One pushes for is the freedom of creation.
It really does, I've noticed.
And that's the biggest thing. Because I can't say hate, because that's really dumb. But I don't like the idea that, like, you know, every party's got a dwarf. Every party's got an elf. Every party's got a human. Nobody wants to be a goblin. Nobody wants to be a kobold. And it's more because, well, I don't want their bonuses. They're not the greatest. They don't get the best stats. I wanted to make a magic caster, and a kobold doesn't really
so
get.
So an elf is better for that.
It's always better because of points. But this way, you know, when I saw that in D&D One, I was like, man, I love that. Like, it really encourages players, and I think it really shows, because the Extraean travelers are a very eclectic mix of species.
And even the people we meet around us, like Miguel was a kobold bard.
Yeah.
Like, that's just something I had never seen in our games.
Yeah, like, whereas the NPCs are also breaking kind of game norms of player design. And it's not going, well, you know, in some contexts where it's like going, oh, okay, well, we know they're weaker then, because obviously they can't be that strong if they're not the right class. You know, you see an elf, it's like, okay, they're going to cast magic, or they're going to dance around the field. You know, they're not going to be super strong. Instead, we got a swole elf, you know, an elf that looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger throwing people around.
Who's not that intelligent and not that eloquent.
and so, you know, for us, I think we are slowly coming to that apex of being a completely homebrew system.
Almost entirely,
right? But for me, until then, we're always going to be kind of taking little pieces of D&D One. Now, some of the issues obviously are always cost with dungeon masters. I mean, dungeon mastering is an expensive sport, and so it's hard when it comes to buying new books and doing that kind of stuff. So I've been using a lot of the kind of reviews and discussions that people are having, but a lot of that's getting hard to come by with WotC kind of putting the foot down on a lot of people, letting people know the material. And I believe the Dungeon Master Guide has, at the time of this recording, has not come out yet. So we're still getting it all. So it'll be really interesting once we get all of it out there and it's kind of the information's been put out. I think that's when we'll probably even have almost like a session 00.
Right, just to make sure.
And go, hey, okay, here's all the rules, lay everything down on the table. Go, what do we like? What do we don't like? Maybe we'll put these in. And I think that's really going to be it. Because at the end of the day, the essence of D&D is the imaginative storytelling, the collaboration, and of course the fun.
Yeah.
That's everything. That will always be at the heart. But the rules do have to be there.
Yeah, at least some
In
rules.
instance, a good example that I always share is my kid brother. He and his friends would play D&D.
Yeah.
Now I say that in the most loosest way possible.
Yeah.
Because they never had a book.
not
We
ever.
ended up gifting them our original starter.
Yeah, we did.
Pack because they literally would just come together every so often,
Yep.
come up with some scenario and just roll dice for rolls and
just figure it out.
But there was no rules.
No.
They didn't know 5e, they didn't know
No.
D&D One. They just kind of had seen what they had seen on television.
Yep.
And online,
Figured it
and
out
just
themselves.
made it happen,
Yeah.
and got their own system. So it really shows that though the rules aren't as important, everyone kind of makes their own in the essence of trying to have fun.
Yep.
And that they're not there to restrict, they're not there to hold you back, but they're really there to start so that we all kind of have the same focus. Because as many of you players and DMs know, the infinite message of choice is always the dread of us players.
It's tough, when you have so much and to pick from and you can't make up your mind.
Right. And the whole thing too, every table is unique. Everyone. I mean, I think there's just Reddit post after Reddit post of post your unique homebrew rules. And the funny thing is there's so many times where I see a short about somebody's homebrew rules and I see something and I'm like, you know what? Maybe we'll do that.
Right.
And we kind of pull it out and we go, I mean, we use the quintessential bonus action potions rules because we've seen it so many places and it's so iconic to the point where we laugh when we do things like we play Baldur's Gate and it's an action.
Yep.
Right?
And we're like, wait,
what? So we've even, because our own homebrew rules, our own philosophies, we think that's the rule.
Yeah,
And
we think it's wrong when it goes against it.
So it just means that it doesn't really matter at that time, whether it's homebrew rules, house rules, official mechanics.
Yeah.
All it does is just make the game more versatile and just more accessible also for people to play. Because without that principal understanding, you're just kind of a couple of dudes rolling dice at a square and going, I win.
What we've taken away is that while the rules do provide this really great sense of sort of, I guess, the boundary for your world and your gameplay, there are some leeways with D&D, and that's the beauty of it at the end of the day. The pick and choose, the ability to create the world that you want with the rules that you want, as long as everybody has fun.
Yeah, and I'd say probably like my final takeaway is really just the idea of give it a chance.
Always.
It's always going to be tough to be the new kid. We all should know that.
Right.
And that, once we see more of it and once more of it comes out, it really is that no one's forcing anyone to change.
No.
But give it a shot. You never know what you might find as a new change or addition to the rules that you can make your own. I have a binder where I just have all the homebrew rules in one book.
Yeah.
And that's what you just do. You just make your own, you let it grow, and you just add more rules as it comes by. So, instead of what I've heard a lot of people talk about in that it's this or that, it's, it's time to move up. The new car model is on the line. It's time to go and buy a new one.
Yeah.
No. You can just sit and wait and have fun. There are plenty of first edition players still out there, still playing their
Having
first edition
fun.
rules, the Gygax special. And, so it really just shows the testament to kind of, it's your D&D.
Yeah.
You just got to play it.
Yeah. Play it however it plays for everyone to have fun is always the goal of what we do today.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. We hope we've given you some food for thought on how D&D One might shape your future games, whether you're sticking with 5e or planning to try out some new mechanics.
Yeah. No matter what direction you choose, remember there's no one right way to play. At the end of the day, it's about having fun at your table and crafting great stories with your friends.
Exactly. And we'd love to hear from you. How are you planning your games with the new edition? Are you diving in or sticking with what you know? Head over to our Couple of Nerds Discord, share your thoughts, ask questions, and maybe even inspire some of our future episodes.
That's right. Your voice matters, and we want this community to be a place where we can learn and grow together. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode.
Plus, you can check out our new website for all the links to your favorite podcast platforms. Just head over to shows.acast.com/youhearditfromus.
Thanks for listening, and until next time, may all your rolls be high and your adventures epic.
Thanks for tuning in to You Heard It From Us.
We hope you enjoyed the adventure and picked up a few tips for your own gaming table. But the journey doesn't end here.
We'd love to hear from you. Join our Couple of Nerds Discord community where you can share your thoughts, ask questions, and suggest topics for future episodes. Whether you're a seasoned player or just starting out, there's a spot for everyone at our table.
To keep up with all our latest adventures and episodes, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep the magic alive and connects us with even more amazing listeners like you.
And remember, you can find us on all major podcast platforms. Just search for You Heard It From Us and hit that subscribe button.
We can't wait to see you on Discord and hear your stories. Together, we can make the world of tabletop gaming even more magical.
Until next time, keep rolling those dice.
And may your adventures be legendary.